Hannah already introduced me. My name is Iliana Grosse-Buening, and I'm truly honored to hold the closing keynote for this year's AI for the Rest of Us. Thank you so much for having me, Hannah, and also thank you to you for having me. On a regular day, well, Monday to Friday, I'm the co-founder of Deeply Human Innovation. But as Hannah already kind of spilled the beans, today I'm not just here as Iliana. I'm here to speak on behalf of over 200 Londoners that we interviewed on the streets of London. People we approached, people sitting on benches in parks, baristas, bouncers, taxi drivers, Uber drivers. I don't even know what my Uber rating is like now because I've literally spoken to every single person whose car I've been in about AI. And what we did is we went around London with also some amazing volunteers who I hope are here in the room today to ask people 12 questions about how they feel about AI. What does good look like to them? What does bad look like to them? What do they understand when they hear the word AI? What is the emotion that comes up when they hear AI? What would make them trust AI more? And this one gets very interesting. What is one message that they would send to those building AI systems or regulating AI systems? And when Hannah and I had this idea, I don't think we could have anticipated the types of conversations that we would have with people on the street. Really, complete strangers who had no incentive. We really didn't give them anything except for a flyer to answer those questions and to sit with us. And as one artist put it, they were grateful to be asked because nobody had done so before. So I think we were also truly humbled to have these conversations with people who are so keen to share their thoughts on AI, which I will share with you today. Now, we often think about data as numbers, but what London in the Loop showed us is that emotions are data too, and many times they can reveal more about what we maybe should be doing next, how we could be designing, deploying, or regulating these technologies. Before I get started, and in the interest of managing expectations, I have a couple of disclaimers. Number one, as you might have expected, this is not a regular tech keynote. This is, first of all, London's keynote on AI, and it's also a human conversation, a conversation that we hope to continue after today as well. So to get us warmed up, and because we've been speaking about AI for 2 full days now, I'd love for you to turn to your neighbor and share with them what is one song you love listening to when you're in a good mood. All right. Hannah, I think your playlist inspired everyone with the talk about music. Let's continue this conversation afterwards. I'm also a big fan of music, as many of you know. Number two disclaimer, the term AGI won't be mentioned. So we wanted to make this a space for honest, nuanced conversation, so no dystopian, no utopian narratives. And in fact, statistically speaking, out of the 7,175 cells that we analyzed, the term AGI appeared 4 times. So we felt actually it was relevant to show you the results of this survey. Number 3, we hope that this is just the beginning and that London in the Loop will be something that we continue to do. And in fact, maybe that this keynote today is only a call to action for you to carry this conversation onwards into your teams, into your communities, and actually also your families. So why is this a conversation that we need to have? Why is this a human conversation that we need to have? And to answer this question, I'd like to take you back in time a little bit. And no, this will not be a reference to how the printing press is similar to what we're experiencing today. I'd like to take you back exactly 25 years to what I consider probably one of the most important moments in my life. The day I received my first phone. You cannot imagine how excited I was when I received this phone. For me, it was privacy, it was liberation, it was freedom from my family's landline. I could text my friends whenever I wanted to. I could also receive texts from people that I didn't want my parents to know about. And I consider myself very lucky that I grew up at a time of tech optimism. I mean, I think I really rode the whole wave, from the first family desktop to my own laptop, you know, first phone, first Walkman, first CD player, first iPod at some point, first MSN Messenger account, first Facebook account where I got to share my photos. I know that all of you in this room can relate to the story. Unfortunately, the next generation can't so much anymore. You know, back then, this was pretty common. New iPhone came out, everyone was queuing, everyone was super excited. And so I was thinking to myself, why aren't we this excited about this moment in history right now? Because technically speaking, AI promises to do more than any other technology ever before, for medicine, for education, and it also has the power to liberate us from some tasks that, if we're totally honest, we don't really like to do anyway. But the truth is, we're not excited. And when we ask people on the streets of London, what is the first word that comes to mind when you think about AI? Actually, the majority of people mentioned either technical or negative terms. The word utopia appeared exactly one time. On average, people felt 3 emotions, 2.9 emotions, in the context of AI. And those were often conflicting emotions. So we had a lot of excited and uncertain, empowered and skeptical. A lot of curious. But yeah, so why can't we be excited about this technology that promises to do so much for us? And I have a couple of hypotheses. We have understood that technology, and actually the way we interact with technology in our daily lives, is not an isolated tool anymore, but it's an integral part of our daily lives. And as a digital society, the way we interact with technology affects fundamental aspects of how we derive meaning and also well-being. The way we interact with technology impacts our time. In fact, we'll spend about 36 years of our lives in front of screens on average. It impacts our mental health, whether that's doom scrolling, whether that's kind of the information that we see online, whether that's how we compare ourselves to other people on social media. So it impacts our mental state. It impacts our relationships. I think we've all been either on the receiving end or on the giving end with someone who was on their phone when we were speaking to them, or in a meeting when somebody was receiving notifications or we're trying to talk to them. And now we're outsourcing more and more of these conversations we should be having with our friends and maybe also professionals to LLMs. And maybe at some point even our romantic relationships. Now, the way we interact with technology, I mean, whilst it can do so much in terms of productivity, it can also do the opposite. I mean, who here has not felt completely overwhelmed by having to manage all the digital tools that they're being confronted with, and the amount of task switching and switching between interfaces that they have to do on a regular day? We've outsourced our memory. Now we're also increasingly outsourcing our cognition and the way that we're thinking. And on a societal level, and with increasingly large amounts of synthetic information that we're exposed to, there's also the issue of trust and truth. And with more deepfakes and more disinformation being shared, I think this will only become harder to manage over time. And these statistics that I'm showing you here, that's not a dystopian narrative for the future. This is already happening, and AI will only amplify this, to the extent that actually the OECD has issued a report emphasizing the critical need to measure and understand these impacts, these human impacts, to ensure positive and inclusive digital economy and society. So I think we can all agree that many of us feel these things, but the systems we live in haven't caught up with it. And I don't think, and many people might imagine some, malicious product manager sitting somewhere trying to really capture people's attention. And while that can be the case, sometimes, I think overall it is a result of a taken for grantedness. That a lot of the systems that we're operating in right now, we came up with at some point in history. And they might not be serving us anymore now, so we might actually need to change the way that we're doing things. So my first question to you, and I guess the first question that we need to answer is, what needs to change so that our systems acknowledge the human factor in AI transformation? Now, the second reason why I think we're not excited about AI is the narratives that we're exposed to, either through tech companies or through the media. We ask people what the worst and best future with AI is to them, what word comes to mind. And when we asked them about the best future, people were mostly aligned on topics like, we clustered them around efficiency, regulated, liberation. As I mentioned before, the word utopia appeared once, helper. So you can see there's alignment there, but doesn't really feel truly inspirational. Now, when we talked about the worst future with AI, suddenly there were a whole bunch of scenarios that came up. And we're talking, very imaginative and very vivid and very real feelings around existential risk, loss of control, power inequalities, and also human skills displacement, or generally human displacement. So how come the worst case scenario is war and overlords, and the best case scenario and what people are thinking of is a workflow that is automated or more efficient? We already know how important it is that people have a vision for the future that they can believe in order to develop trust and acceptance of autonomous systems. So where are the human visions for the future that we need? The visions that show that people building systems and regulating systems have good intentions for society. Those are all the answers from people. That AI tangibly improves people's real lives, actually understanding how can this improve my life today. Like, for example, Abdul, my amazing Uber driver, one of them, who shared with me how he uses ChatGPT to help him with his written English, and how he thinks this is an amazing tool to help those whose written English is worse than their spoken English. Where are the visions that show that this is a reliable technology whose outputs we can rely on, and perhaps also sometimes the honesty when we cannot rely on the outputs? Where are the visions that show that people still have control and choice of where AI is used in their daily lives, and that it can be controlled, and also that it's developed responsibly with guardrails? But what I have found very important as well is where are the visions that show that we're not trying to replace something that is truly important to people. And I think this is where the beginning keynote of AI for the rest of us, speaking about the human skills that we want to preserve and that we're so proud of. Where are the visions that show that we're not trying to replace something, and in fact we're trying to promote the things that are most meaningful to people? So my second question to you is, what do human-centered narratives and future visions for AI look like, and who gets to shape them? Now, the last reason, I guess the last reason that fits into 30 minutes that I have for why I think we're not excited about AI is because we're not entirely sure about the role that we play in this time of change. And we ask people, for what they would like to say to AI builders and regulators if they could send them one message. And I think what all of these messages show is that we have a problem of agency and that people feel disempowered and feel like they have no power in shaping the next step. Just going to read them out. I'm worried my child won't be able to have original thoughts and ideas because AI would be on hand. Make sure not to take it too far. Don't just put AI in everything. Think about why you are using AI and does it solve the problem better than not using it? Be intentional. Build for humanity and our globe and not to replace or destroy them. Hello. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this out loud. So we will publish these messages and we're thinking of using that as our title. And then one participant who said, this is irrelevant, I feel. These people, even the regulators, will be bored. We'll never have the people's interests at heart. It will always be about extraction and profit maximization. So I think a crucial part of the next chapter is to actually rewrite the story as AI that happens with and for people and not to them, so that they can become co-creators and they actually become subjects and not objects of change. So my third question to you is, how do we empower people and how do we promote agency on different levels, as individuals, teams, organizations, communities? So what else did London teach us? Well, London is very curious, which is great because I think curiosity is also what drives so many things and what makes us excited to learn new things. But London also has many conflicting emotions. As I previously said, we had many excited, uncertain, empowered, skeptical, and also a couple of left behinds. And if there's one thing that I guess my almost now decade in the space of digital well-being and ethics has taught me is that we need to manage, we need to resolve those cognitive dissonances if we want people to embrace this technology and really leverage the full potential. And we need spaces for nuanced, informed conversations like this one today. London has also very practical questions about AI, which I think is great, because you would think that the majority of questions, if we ask people, what's one thing you wish you understood about AI, would actually be, unmanageable. But actually, a lot of the questions that people had, I think if I sent them to you, you could probably answer them. So I think this is great. And actually, fun fact, this was done by ChatGPT, and I think ChatGPT is really not very great at analyzing stats, so please don't take a picture of this. We think, and I guess common sense would tell us, that the more familiar we are with a technology, also the more empowered we feel and the more excited we feel about it. So again, please don't take a picture of this. Cannot entirely trust AI, but I think they're right. London also told us what is meaningful, what is important to them as AI becomes an increasingly dominant part of our daily lives. One is equity and equal access to opportunities. So actually, I want everyone to benefit was the most popular answer when we asked them, as AI becomes part of everyday life, what matters most to you? There's the question of agency and how much control people have in shaping which parts of their lives are affected by AI and which aren't, and how they get to use and how they get to impact also algorithmic decisions. A big one was also purpose, and I want to remain essential, I think, is again one of those very deeply human topics that we need to talk about as AI becomes increasingly integrated in our daily lives. And the last one, and I think this is kind of maybe not a surprise, is one of accountability and governance. And I think what was interesting, again, please don't take a picture because ChatGPT did this, but there's really a correlation between age and what matters to people. And I think what all of this data showed us is that these are all starting points for us to understand how do we maybe change the way we design, deploy, regulate, also communicate these technologies. because everyone has something to say. And then lastly, London showed us that London cares. In fact, only 2% of people we interviewed used the word indifferent, and that was the only emotion they cited. So people care, and people have feelings, and I think what this tells us is that whoever you're building for, whoever you're designing an AI strategy for, whoever your stakeholders might be, they probably have emotions around AI and towards AI, and that is impacting their trust, that is impacting whether they embrace this technology or not. There was a speaker I heard a couple of years ago in Germany, and I don't want to take credit for this metaphor, but in her talk about future skills in AI, she asked people the question, why do you think this bird is not afraid of the branch breaking? Why do you think the bird is not afraid of the branch breaking? It can fly, yes. Actually, in the audience in Germany, someone said because the bird is stupid. Well, I think this is a wonderful metaphor, and again, I don't want to take credit for it, but I thought it kind of encapsulates this quite beautifully. Because what we're presented with now and what the next step will be about is ensuring that we all have the tools, but also the mindset, and the trust in ourselves to know that we can navigate this time of change. And so that essentially we all know that if the branch breaks, we can fly. But I would like to extend this and say that I think as the builders and regulators and as people involved in the AI system, we also have the opportunity to strengthen the branch. So there's something actually that we can all do to ensure that this branch doesn't break. And I think, if anything, London in the Loop taught us that there's so many starting points, there's so much information we can take from conversations with people to understand how do we strengthen this branch. Now, I'm almost at the close, and I think I'm right on time. But because this is the closing keynote, I'd love for you to just take a moment to reflect on the last 2 days that you've experienced at AI for the rest of us. And maybe just think of one word, maybe one emotion, or one thing you leave from AI for the rest of us today from AI for the rest of us. So we have a nice little collage also for Hannah to take home. Let's take a look. Perspective, relieved. Bubble, support. Still bubble after this? I'll send you the survey results. Let's take a look. Optimistic, perspective. Well, let's keep adding to this, and I'm sure that Hannah will have a nice little collage to take away. I started this keynote with the disclaimer that this is not the end of this conversation. And in fact, I hope that you stay in touch, because we will keep talking and we will keep, developing London in the Loop, and maybe even do a little launch for the reports where all the survey findings from these conversations will be published. And yeah, if anyone has any ideas for the name for those 200 plus messages to AI builders and regulators, please come to us, because we'd be super excited to hear that. Thank you so much for having me, and yeah.